The Day Before Yesterday, 2 Days Before Tomorrow, by Toby O'Keeffe. Lines of text marked redacted indicate areas of confidentiality for reasons of anonymity or good taste. Before we begin. Hello, is that you? Stop calling this number. Just please leave me alone. That was indeed the first and final words spoken, the first being that of utter simplicity, and the last a return to normality. Or so, redacted, had thought. Alone in the comfort of silence. Alone without need for les autres. Alone, for lack of a better understanding, is an absence of anyone else. Because the events that play out at this point can be somewhat confusing, even when put in their plainest form, accessible to a reader as, well, simple-minded as yourself, I have chosen to begin before the end and outline them in their clearest form. The day before yesterday. 2 days before tomorrow. A young person, hereafter person 1, of age no older than yourself or myself, had at one point or another mistaken the number 5 in the elevator of number 205 for the number 7. The numbers had been swapped. By whom? One cannot say, as the Envishaw system within the complex had been down for some time. Person 1 proceeded to step from the elevator, as one does to check their surroundings, only to be greeted at sharp glance by another person, hereafter person 2. This one far older than you or me, of course. A witness had ensured us that person 2 was a man of great height with a large, dark moustache. He smiled, I am sure, as he retrieved his key from the lock of apartment 8. I interrupt your intent reading now to deliver a quote from the great Jean Perrat, to be read with an air of prophetic wisdom. In life there are only 2 ways, in or out. Only when you have discovered which of these you wish to follow will you truly be at peace. It must have been at this point that our moustache man discovered his answer to this question, and this was most certainly in. Despite my attempts to resurrect what is truly a harsh story, and in some ways to sugarcoat it, I've grown weary of such melancholy and soft pursuits. In short, person 2 follows person 1. Person 1 closes the door to apartment 109, floor 7. Person 2 knocks requesting use of certain amenities unfound. Person 1 answers the door whilst it remains bolted. Person 2 overpowers person 1, causing damage to property on entrance. And it is here where I must return to a most sensitive tone, for the events ensued can only be described as tragic. Witness accounts tell us only so much. Heavy footsteps down front passage, followed by even heavier ones, reported by residents of apartment 99, floor 6. A muffled scream, similar to that made when having a tooth pulled, was heard shortly after supper, reported by residents apartment 111, floor 7. Silence for some time, reported by all. This subsequent silence may have continued for even more than some time, were it not for the intrusion of officer number 199788 and officer 178883, hereafter officer 1 and officer 2 respectively, who were called about half an hour prior to report a break-in that had occurred at apartment 102, floor 7, 4 days prior. Nothing had been taken, and the only damage a loose ceiling vent. The occupant had only just returned from travel. The victim of the redacted that had ensued was spared, no doubt from a grisly end, by Officer 2, who had noticed the signs of forced entry and entered apartment 109. Person 2, after a brief attempt at escape via the open door, reached into his upper breast pocket to remove a gun, but was shot dead at the scene by Officer 1, who had heard from his or her place at the doorway sounds of a struggle. Now that dull episode is dealt with, we step onto slightly more interesting ground, that which concerns the case that is to follow. It becomes necessary at this point to name names, for names are the only way in which one can gain a name for him or herself. Person 1, Mr. Dennis Claudier, apartment 109, floor 7, number 205, age 34. Reclusive but world-renowned digital artist. You may have heard of his piece, Sitting Duck. Active gay rights movement sympathizer. Person 2, Mr. Michael Latonde, age 54, apartment 88, floor 5, number 205. Mr. Dennis Claudier's ex-lover of 3.5 years, since convicted of sexual assault, acquitted on grounds of insufficient evidence. As I'm assuming you already know, the Claudier-Letond affair was one of much public scrutiny. The relationship ended abruptly and publicly, shortly prior to the court case concerning the aforementioned sexual assault charge. Claudier, being the hermit that he is, shied well away from the public light, whilst Letond, on the other hand, stood square in it. Now one can understand why the price paid for such information has been particularly important whilst discussing this matter. One cannot simply give away the details of such an interesting predicament without asking first for a reasonable sum. And so I trust that such information will be used responsibly, and you should not dare slander such an innocent man as Mr. Claudier. Regards, and awaiting your next call as if it were the last, Mr. Redacted.